This is week 3 of building our van's RV-9 Empennage. We spent the beginning part of this week celebrating a certain someone. Happy birthday, Sam.
Thank you, Kelsey.
It's been a very, very cold week. I know, surprise, surprise, last week was cold too. So we decided to come up with a plan to try to keep the workshop a little bit warmer, and Sam came up with this great idea.
Well, it began with seeing greenhouses that were on sale, and I thought maybe we could put a greenhouse in our hangar, but then I decided, why don't we just create a greenhouse effect by putting a false ceiling in with plastic. As you can see, we hung some cables across the wall, and then later on we put a curtain in place, which I think you'll see later in the video. But on this day, it was just a prototype to get some plastic up to see if the idea worked. And it really did.
It went from being about 40 degrees inside of our workshop to getting closer to 60, which is a very doable temperature.
And we even saw 70 if we kept the diesel heater going.
But now we're on to working on our rudder. It was a very busy week of getting everything put together and fabricating parts, and that's what we're doing now. Sam is grinding down all of the stiffeners that he made at home, and I am removing some of the protective vinyl to get ready to be able to drill and deburr all of these holes that we're about to rivet.
All the stiffeners had to be cut to size. As you can see, they go up the rudder skins. Each one's a little bit different length. And then after you cut them at home, you then have to polish them here. It's on the grinder wheel, but that's a 3M Scotch-Brite grinder wheel. So it really just kind of deburrs the edges and softens the edges a little bit. As I do all that, Kelsey's laying them out and continuing to pull the vinyl. Putting those aside, now we've started doing work with the actual skeleton of the rudder, which includes a front spar and then not many, but 3 ribs. And then the trailing edge of the rudder is just riveted together with a small wedge piece. We're not there yet. I'm just kind of describing what it's going to look like. We're still working on the stiffeners.
As you can see, there's lots and lots of clecos going into place so that we can drill out these holes and make them up to size.
Yep. Kelsey clecoed them all in place, and then we're getting the drill ready. And we're actually you can see the plywood that we put underneath there. We're drilling right into that plywood so that the clecos can go into the plywood each row at a time. That way the plywood can remain flat. Okay, one is done. Now we're doing the second one. And this time we decided to, just one stiffener at a time. Went right on down, drilling it out. Okay, now comes the deburring. We deburred, we put the workbenches together, got our DT2 dimpler machine out. Here I am being lazy with my rolling seat, but I'm working through all the holes, dimpling every hole that we just drilled.
I love that we kind of each take our tasks at this point. I'm back there, deburring and smoothing some of the edges, and you're just steadily dimpling away.
And again, the reason we dimple is that the rivets we're using are countersunk into the skin. Again, for aerodynamics, they're completely flush with the skin, but that means every hole has to be dimpled. And not only that, but the stiffeners that go on the backside have to be dimpled as well, because the skin then goes into the stiffener, and then of course the rivet goes into both those items. Now over on the left side, we've put the steel backing plate on the workbench, and I'm back riveting, that's the shop head of the rivets, down into place. I do the riveting, Kelsey does the checking to make sure it's the right diameter, and we're just working right down the line. Back riveting is pretty easy when you have the metal plate underneath. It doesn't require somebody holding a bucking bar and riveting at the same time. And we put the two skins together, and we're testing what you can see with the light there. We needed to make sure that where the trailing edge is, the rivets were small enough so that they overlap with each other. So we had to make a couple of adjustments, and it worked. Now you can see we've moved on to building the skeleton, putting the ribs together, putting the spar together, and all the pieces. We're doing that so that we can drill all those pieces out. I just noticed that the ceiling was a little bit droopy, and remember, this is just a prototype ceiling.
But now we have a nice taut ceiling. Look at that. And curtains. Isn't that nice?
Yeah, when Kelsey was working, I spent the morning putting a few more cables into the ceiling and then making the curtains that we could drag. I also, that last view showed I had to move one of our cameras down below the ceiling because you couldn't quite see through the plastic. So now we have a left and right shop camera, and you can see that Kelsey has made the time-lapse video somewhat switching back and forth.
And we're putting it all together so that we can match drill the rudder. It's looking like a rudder now.
Yeah, so yeah, put it all together like she said so that we can final drill all the holes in the trailing edge, and then the spar and the inside ribs.
Playing ring around the rosy around the rudder. You're drilling as I'm removing clecos. Making sure everything has a nice, neat fit right before we drill. And now it's time to start taking it apart to deburr and dimple again.
This is the next day. We have our coats on because it really got cold outside, but it's warm inside, but a little bit warmer when we keep our coats and hats on. It's amazing how the difference between a below freezing day and an above freezing day is, how it affects the inside temperature of the hanger. So back to deburring, filing all the edges, making sure everything's smooth. And with aluminum, you don't want any sharp edges or any machine marks or anything that could develop into a crack. So we make sure everything's smooth, and this takes a lot of time, a lot of sandpaper, a lot of Scotch-Brite, but that's what we do. Okay, back to dimpling. So here we're gonna we dimple the spar, we dimple the ribs, and then we dimple the skins. Now I dimpled the skins before for the stiffeners, but now we're dimpling the skins for all the other holes that were just drilled that go into the spar and the ribs. Here's the view of the new camera that we moved down. I'm really loving the workbenches. I'm glad that we built the EAA workbenches. All 4 are 2x5, and they're really easy to move around and set up, and you can see we have our dimpler set up in between the two.
Now it's time for the skins. It's a little tricky to get everything right on the dimple die, so you'll see I get down below so I can see the hole from underneath and make sure that we're not making any accidental punctures that we shouldn't be.
And we've gotten our language down pat for what up, down, go means.
All right. The end of week 3.